onto disc 4, you have Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, which is the first film not to be called A Nightmare on Elm Street, even though technically it is Nightmare on Elm Street 6. It is just called Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. It comes with 4 featurettes and a theatrical trailer. The disc also has Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which sort of takes the series from a different take on the series, sort of set in a different universe. I'll talk about that in a second. And that comes with a commentary from Wes Craven, 5 featurettes, and a theatrical trailer. Now, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare sort of goes away from the ongoing characters we had in parts 1, 3, 4, and 5, and it takes place 10 years later, and it's just the whole premise of Freddy's back somehow. You know, Freddy gets conquered at the end of each film, but they don't really explain what happened in the meantime, but he's come back somehow and killed off all of the teenagers in the town where it's based. And it's just got a really cheesy, it's just a really cheesy film with lots of even cheesier sequences than part 5, lots of silly shenanigans, and just not a good film. And it comes with lots of crappy cameos, one from Johnny Depp, which I guess is to tie in with him being in the original film. I should have mentioned that Johnny Depp was in the first film alongside Heather Langenkamp. I always find it funny that there's a big star in the beginning of each of the 3 franchise films, with Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, and Kevin Bacon being in the original Friday the 13th. But yeah, he does a little cameo, but also people like Roseanne and Alice Cooper, and it just seemed more like they were trying to throw as much stuff in as they possibly could. Now the transfer, it's really, really clean, but it's really flat and boring looking. I don't know if that's just the way it was filmed. It's, it's certainly, like all of them, a beef up from the DVD. I used to have the DVD set of this. Something I should mention is that the final climax of the film, last 15 or 20 minutes, was shot in 3D, and I actually saw it in 3D at the cinema. And my old DVD box set of this had it in 3D, and you had 3D glasses with it to watch that segment, and it did work pretty well, even on the home television. They've decided for some reason not to include the 3D version of the finale for Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. To be honest, it's no real loss, because the film is not that great, and the 3D, it worked, but it was just a gimmick, and the film is plenty watchable without it being in 3D. That was pretty much the end of the series. The Freddy's Dead Final Nightmare kind of wrapped it up. They went through his origins and of how he got his powers, and finished him off. And a few years later we had Wes Craven's New Nightmare. They decided to take the franchise in a different area, with it being set in the real world with the original actors from Nightmare on Elm Street. Somehow Freddy coming into the real world from the films they made, and it welcomed the return of Heather Langenkamp from the original and 3rd film, as well as the guy who played her father, and Wes Craven playing himself in the film as the director of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It's an interesting sort of take on playing with horror conventions, kind of a precursor to Scream in many ways. The film is probably the best since the original, or at least as good as part 3 as far as the sequels go. It's not a perfect film, but it seems to drag, and it is a bit extended in places. It's quite long, but it has some really good moments and some really interesting ideas. And Freddy's still doesn't look as good as he did in the early films, but much better than he did in the last couple, especially in part 6, where he looked terrible. As I say, it's definitely an interesting take on the film. Now that's kind of where it sat after that for quite a while, and then they decided to do the crossover film with Freddy versus Jason from the Friday the 13th films, which I didn't particularly like the first time I saw it, but it's kind of grown on me. It's kind of a fun film. It pretty much ignores, it takes place in the for the most part in the town, where it pretty much ignores the final nightmare and does some interesting other things with it, and it stays pretty true to some of the original ideas. And then I saw the remake recently on TV. I didn't really have much interest in it, but it's just kind of a schlocky, needless remake of the original. It's not as good as the original. It's not too much different, except for it's edited a little differently, and you have someone else playing Freddy Krueger. It's not really worth existing, to be quite honest. It could have been worse, but it's more pointless than anything. So we'll have a little closer look at the set. It's the sleeve. Inside the sleeve, it's the same picture. It doesn't have all the information on the back of the special features. It just has the usual credits for each film. Inside, it's just like this. All the discs look pretty much the same except for a slight numbering. You have disc 1, 2, 3, 4, and the bonus. So it's a nice little set. I haven't got Freddy vs. Jason on Blu-ray. I just have it in this DVD set of the final 3 Jason films. So you get it's Freddy vs. Jason just in a slim case. The DVD is just packed full of features. It's a 2-disc, and I don't know if you can see that, but it has got a hell of a lot of special features on the second disc and quite a few on the first. Of course, that comes in the pack with Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell, which also had a cameo from Freddy right at the end, which finally led to this after many years. Okay, that about sums it up. Oh, I should mention something I found interesting just recently, that Heather Langenkamp, who stars in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 3, and The New Nightmare, which is the 7th film in the series, is now working in makeup for visual effects and films, and she did makeup in the visual effects department on Cabin in the Woods, and she is in the making of featurettes, getting interviewed. She's in it quite a bit, the making of featurettes. So it's good to see that Heather Langenkamp is still involved. Okay, one thing though is it would be nice to have a kind of a booklet with this. There was plenty of space to have a booklet, just throw it in here. But at least they did have the information on the back for the special features, unlike the Bond 50 set, which I got recently, which doesn't have any information per film, no kind of booklet, even though there's plenty of space to do so. And I noticed they do a lot of that lately, box sets that are coming out without any kind of booklet information or further information about what's on the discs. You just have to go on each disc and find out what's on. This one at least came through in that regard. Okay, that's everything. Recommend picking it up. It's been fun rewatching these.